Oh, that's a given. But
Yeah,
listen, if someone like
but
Burke, as unlikely
exactly.
as it seems, were elected, he'd be the equivalent of Trump in the Catholic
Uh,
Church.
exactly.
He would definitely
Exactly.
rock the establishment to its core. He would obviously eliminate the persecution of the Latin Mass, the
Yep.
weaponization of the Vatican, so to speak,
Yeah, exactly.
just the way Trump is eliminating the weaponization of the Justice
Yeah.
Department. That would be a boon, a miraculous gift if somebody like Burke were to come out of that conclave.
Burke, maybe even
Theoretically, he could come
maybe
out of the conclave as Pope.
he could. Maybe Sarah, I'd throw into that category.
Even Sarah.
Yeah, exactly. But
He's loopy too, but
look,
he's not going to persecute Latin Mass traditionalists, though.
they're all infected with the disease of Vatican II. Some's immune system is fighting it off, others are totally succumbed, right? So it's all a matter of relativity. But what I think is interesting is everybody's focused on Burke, Sarah, then the crazy, Supich, uh, um, the kissing cardinal, Tusho, right? They're all focused on the extremes. But if you look at the numbers, I think there's a core body of cardinals that are just your institutional company men, right? Who are, and we've seen this even in the United States, right? There's your handful zealots for suppressing the Latin Mass. Most of them are just sort of want to keep the peace, right? Just kind of don't like controversy. They're into the institution. And I think, even people he's appointed, there's a large, large number of those. And if they really come together and they push out the extremes, what are we likely to get then?
You never know. And the Holy Ghost doesn't determine the choice of a pope, but there's always the influence of the Holy Ghost
Sure.
in church proceedings. And after all, the Holy Ghost is the soul of the church. It was founded by God incarnate, and we have the promise of indefectibility. So there's always going to be that influence, that wild card influence,
Right.
so that you never can entirely predict what's going to come out of a conclave. Although I have to say, Francis's arrival was pretty predictable.
Yeah.
After Benedict fled in fear of the wolves, just as he thought that he might.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, anything can happen in a conclave. You just never
Yes.
know. And also, manipulations can happen in a conclave. There can be deals in a conclave, illicit deals. The entire history of the church shows us that
Yeah.
innumerable times illicit deals have resulted in the acquisition of the papacy by someone or other who turned out to be a bad pope, at least morally speaking, although we've never had a pope like this one who attacks doctrine and dogma.
Yeah.
The Borgia popes at their worst would be preferable to what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, Alexander VI tried to make his illegitimate son a cardinal, but he didn't try to say, like, illegitimacy is not a sin, go, let me bless you, right? That's the fundamental difference.
Yeah.
Um,
In terms of
yeah,
mitigation of harm for the
yeah,
common good of the church as a commonwealth, I'd rather have Alexander VI.
yeah, exactly, right. He was too
That's
busy.
quite a statement to make, too.
I'd rather a pope's too busy being personally immoral than wrecking the church. I agree. But again, what I'd like to talk about is another issue that's come up. It's funny. I was talking to somebody who doesn't believe that Francis is the Pope. I mean, he just says, I don't think he's the Pope. He's got his reasons. I don't agree with all of them, but but I said to him, okay, he's about to die. What do you do now? Because again, remember that chart, 63 of these people are appointed by him. If he's not the Pope, how do you get any certainty out of the next election? Because you're not going to see the ballots and know if I exclude the 63 votes that he elected, do we have a valid Pope? So how does the state of a contest, or even a France of a contest, maybe so he's not extreme, but just has doubts about Francis, how do they get out of this box?
Well, once you embrace the state of a contest hypothesis, there's no logical stopping point
Right.
because of the grounds for believing that a pope has lost his office. And some of those grounds preclude the existence of an institutional church at this point.
Right.
They're saying that the ordination rite is invalid, the episcopal consecration rite is invalid. Of course, the bishops are all invalid because they embrace the same heresies as Francis,
Yeah.
so the argument goes. So we don't have an episcopacy, or at least we don't have an episcopacy in the vast overwhelming majority, so that the conclave is going to be full of heretics who all lost their office. So how would we know that these so-called heretics could elect a valid pope? So obviously we can't go there. We are unable to establish the existence or non-existence of authority based upon an assessment of the subjective disposition of a prelate, because he hasn't been given a canonical trial. There's no opportunity to retract. You and I would get an opportunity to retract if we espoused a heresy.
Yeah.
The bishop or Rome itself, if we published something heretical or contrary to faith and morals, would demand a retraction, and we would have the opportunity to retract. These people aren't given that process because there's no one to conduct it for them, especially with the Pope. No one can judge the first see. So, we have to presume if the promises of the indefectibility of the church mean anything, if Christ is who he says he is, that the conclave that next happens will elect a valid pope. And if you don't believe that, then you believe the institutional church no longer exists. It's really that simple.
Well, the squared circle that sometimes I've tried to make is sort of have their cake and eat it too. He's not the Pope, but this conclave could produce another Pope, which again, I don't see how you can put those together.